All right, this article just got dropped. Let's see what we got. So, on standard and moving the ban and restricted announcement to November 10th. With the results of the latest Spotlight series arriving on the heels of several high profile standard events, the conversation around cards, VIVI Orner, and Agatha Soul Cauldron, and speculations on emergency bans in standard, we thought now would be a good time to check in. First, we do think we got our ban and restricted announcement timing windows wrong during this part of the year. This is the first year we've tried these announcements to tie these announcements to play seasons, and we don't think we gave ourselves quite the right windows. That has put additional strain on a few formats, including standard, and we know that we can pull some of the fun out of playing competitively. So to that end, we are going to be more aggressive next year with the number of ban and restricted announcement windows and timings adding more. We're still fiddling with that cadence, but our aim is to have one for each major set release or close to that amount to maintain a sense of predictability and avoid disruptions during play seasons. It's not always possible to have that particular cake and eat it too, but we hear loud and clear that we don't have enough windows of opportunity. So I guess we're getting more ban windows. I don't really know what that means. I've had problems. We're right here. I've had problems with the way a lot of this has been set up. I just think it's kind of annoying. And like having emergency ban windows as a concept doesn't really make that much sense to me. It seems like they're just ban windows, but they're like slightly different ban windows. And there's one ban that's like a rotational ban. I think it's confusing. I think the purpose of all these things is to like give players a sense of security, and I don't know that this actually accomplishes that. So I kind of would like just the game to be fun and bad things to happen to people's collections, and that sucks. But I think that's how things probably should be and sort of have been. We'll see. We're going to slightly move up our previously announced ban and restricted announcement to date from November 24th to November 10th. Okay, so 14 days sooner. Sure. This keeps the basic premise of not interfering with players who had planned their decks for the standard RCQ seasons while still moving up the announcement and giving players more time to prepare for the World Championship should something change. So I don't really know the date of events. Like I don't really know when each thing is happening. This might positively affect like one event. But you're still going to be stuck with this format instead of just making a change to it when they're sort of admitting that they're going to make a change, which doesn't feel particularly good to me. I've sort of like, I haven't played a ton of Pro Tours. I've played in 7. But I've always had the opinion that like the high level players should just kind of, for lack of a better phrase, just eat shit. Like just bad things should happen. And I think that it sucks and it's unfortunate, but in a lot of cases, like when you are heavily invested in something, you can like sort of take those hits and move on. You have more resources. You sort of built your network and have more access to different things. And that's on a case-to-case basis. Everyone's different. Maybe have personal bias, but I'm not sure if I care so much about the people prepping for high-level tournaments and then them getting blindsided and sort of having to scramble. It's not ideal. It's not good. But no matter what, you are going to have a situation in which things that are not ideal and are not good are going to happen. Whether that's people deciding to discontinue to engage with standard because it's not fun, or it's people getting their cards taken from them and choosing to disengage with standard because, well, their cards got banned. I don't know the fix. I don't know if there is a real fix, but I'm not super stoked about the current state of things. So this seems like maybe we're moving somewhat towards the direction I prefer, but I don't know how much this actually translates to. I should have saved where we were. Yeah, okay. So what we're not going to do is create a previously unannounced emergency ban window in the middle of the RCQ season, though it's worth noting that we have seen calls for it and discussed it. Ultimately, we opted to stick more or less to what we had said before. So yeah, this is, again, like they just set up these rules to give people this sense of security, which I don't even know if people have that, like considering they're asking for emergency bans when the rules are stated that this is how it's going to be, and Wizards discussed breaking their own rule and decided not to, but it still sort of has been proven to be something that could have potentially happened if things were bad enough. So then does that sense of security actually exist if there are universes where they do just break the rule? Which is part of why I have a problem with like scheduling this stuff, where it almost feels manipulative to me, where like obviously like you could have a format that's even worse than this standard format, and there's a deck that's more broken than the VV deck, and there's like 0 decks that can beat it, whereas in this format you have like mono red. I just don't like these restrictions where you're just kind of like convincing people that they're safe, and then tying your own hands. It seems sort of silly to me, but whatever. I don't know. I'm not a game designer. I don't work at Wizards, so we're gonna do okay. Yeah. The aforementioned RCQ players who have taken time off. Yeah, okay, so this is just going to explain why it's bad. I mean, I get it. This goes back to me saying kind of just eating shit. But at the end of the day, right, like, I don't think... It depends on what the ban is and what's happening. I don't think that if a ban happens, that the people that pay to travel and assemble cards, like, they'll probably have access to other cards. Like, let's say VIVI gets banned, you could still play, like, an Is It Prof deck. You're still going to be able to play in the event. Like, it's not ideal. It's not good. I get it. I'm not, like, just arguing that, oh, this is perfect. I have the perfect solution. Clearly no one does, because look at where we're at. But, I don't know. I think typically, like, at least from my experience, when I was playing in events, was, like, I would probably have more than one deck just to have some options. Or have more than parts of one deck, and then I would have to buy whatever the rest of the cards I was missing. So, assuming that you give people like a couple of weeks before the events, I don't know if I have a huge issue with it. But I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion that I'm correct. It's just sort of how I would prefer things to be. A surprise change of the format hurts them the most. Yeah. Just a few years ago, we tried to give ourselves the flexibility to ban cards whenever we wanted by removing permitted ban dates, sometimes giving notice, sometimes not. It was chaos, and in retrospect, the wrong move. Okay, so they're not interested in having unscheduled bans. Okay. Every weekend was filled with banning speculation, calls for bans. So this just happens all the time anyway. I kind of find it frustrating when people say, well, it's really good that there's scheduled bans because then people will shut up about bans. But, like, I think the past few years, even though there's a rule that there will not be bans, every single, like, time a new set comes out, there's just people in the community talking about bans. Whether it's, like, bullshit like Slick Shot Show Off or Deep Cavern Batter, just, like, cards that clearly should be banned. This Discord, as far as I interpret what I see on the internet, it hasn't gone away. And a lot of people just don't understand like these, schedules and things anyway. So to me, it's like if you have these schedules and people don't even understand, like, I don't know what percentage of people are even aware or read an article like this. Like if the larger parts of the community just don't know they exist, then are the bans going to feel better when they do happen because they're scheduled? Or are people just going to be like, oh, I didn't even know that there was a ban coming up and my cards got banned. This sucks. I feel like shit. And I guess my point is, like, does it really make it a difference? Is this really accomplishing what they think it is? And I'm not sure. Maybe it is. But whatever. Okay, we're not doing that again. Okay, so we're not doing unscheduled bans. Sure. Unfortunate, but I get it. We want players to turn organizers. Yeah, okay. We believe that we will likely take action in November. The order is warping the format and likely needs to go. We are unsure about Agatha's Soul Cauldron, but we don't think the format has reached its final form, which gives us the clearest direction to set up standard for long-term success. So it's interesting to not have a ban list, but say, we're going to ban VV. It's like 98% we're going to ban VV. We don't know what to do with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. I would ban VV. I think a lot of people like VV and want VV to exist, but like, there's even a card in the Spider-Man set that's like the blue-black 4-drop that can just become a VV with 4 power the turn you play it. I think Agatha's Soul Cauldron is a design that's like questionable, that like it's very difficult to know if it's going to be broken or not, and maybe it shouldn't have been made for those reasons. I think VIVI is just a design mistake, like full stop. Even if you ignore the making things into VIVIs or whatever, with a card like Agatha's Soul Cauldron, I just think like the rate and what it does and how much mana it makes, and the fact that it effectively ends up being free, and you can like, if you have 8 cantrips or whatever, the turn after you play it, it's like 16 damage. There's just a lot of problems I have with it. I think it's a bad design. I would personally like to see it go, but whatever. We came here for the article, not me talking about that. All right, what do I mean by that? Okay, this is a pretty cool article, honestly. Like, seems like there's a lot of transparency, which is awkward. It's awkward to be like, we're not gonna ban anything, but here's what we think. Instead of just banning stuff, but whatever. I mean, I appreciate the amount of experimenting. I appreciate that there's been more transparency in Magic over the years. There's a lot of decisions and changes they've made that I think suck. I think they're really bad. I really don't like 3-year standard. I really don't like once-a-year bans. I have some problems with the amount of sets in standard. I have some problems with Universes Beyond. But I appreciate a lot of the effort. I appreciate a lot of the designs within these sets. I think there's some cool cards coming out. But let's see. Here's what we see right now. VIVI Cauldron decks have taken the spotlight with disproportionate metagame shares and top finishes, but recently players have found a version of Mono Red that is rebalancing the scales. Okay, I mentioned that earlier. Not only is it more played on the MTG Arena ladder, but has a better win percentage against the field and is knocking off VIVI Cauldron decks at a clip up of 60%. We're also seeing new decks like the second place Mono Green Stompy deck from the challenge. So they like to do this where like, there's just like a million challenges a weekend, and they'll just like cite one of them, and everyone does it because, I don't know, some things are exciting and it's fun to post about tournaments, but it's just like one tournament, so I don't know how much this is worth, but it's cool. Promising win percentage, blah blah blah. Despite the top finishes of the VIVI Cauldron deck, it's entirely possible Mono Red is the best deck in the format, and that there's further evolution coming. So one note I do want to make that I think is very funny is how many people complained that they banned like Heartfire Hero and Monstrous Rage, and how Red was dead and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there's 100 billion cards in Standard. The Mouse deck is like the most played, it's like one of the best decks in Pioneer. There's a lot of insane red cards left over, and clearly that is the case. To some extent, it has to do with the fact that the red cards are specifically good against what is the best deck, which is VIVI. But still, like, you have great options. That's been proven. I don't know. People are very bad at understanding bans and the effects of bans on formats, but it's hard. I mean, I'm not perfect at it. No one is. Okay, VIVI owners, clear outlier, but the format hasn't reached an equilibrium yet. Okay, so they want to wait, but they know that there's a problem. They're admitting that. I guess that's nice. And they said next year we'll get more bans for whatever that's worth, which is weird because it's like, are you expecting to have to make more bans because you know that you have, like, if they have 6 sets a year and they have like half the time, or like whatever, more than half the time for each set to balance and design the cards, you're gonna get more VIVIs, right? If you have less time to balance things, they're gonna be less balanced, right? That only makes sense. So it's kind of scary. Like, there's some cards in the Spider-Man set that are a bit questionable to me. I don't know how many times that's gonna happen, but I'm legitimately worried. I appreciate, like, these types of things do give me some amount of what's the word? I don't know. They make me feel better about the state of things, because it's like, okay, well, we're going to tell you what we think is going on and how we feel. But I'm still not sure that I'm convinced that we're going to go down a path that is going to make Standard the best it can be. But it's a difficult task. They've tried a lot of different things, and not everything has worked. Okay. We believe Standard play may be hurt in the short term by 1 or 2 dominant decks. Long term, it's certainly hurt by banning decks out from under players in a surprise move. So their point is, if you ban people's cards that are new or newer, they'll just stop playing Standard altogether, and then you won't be able to fill out seats in your local stores. I think that's a fair critique. I think that's a lot of the reason that they've made the changes that they've made. Probably going to continue to say stuff like that. Want players have as much confidence as possible in their ability to put a deck together and play it for as long as possible. That's why we moved to 3-year standard, while we minimize bans where possible. So yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. This is a good place to add that our philosophy on standard bans hasn't changed. Our intention is to make changes to the format once a year. Like, okay, maybe this isn't the video for it. I can make a different video to sort of gather all my thoughts. But like, I don't know. I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't have the right answer, but it doesn't feel to me like forcing yourself to have this specific spot in time once a year where you're allowed to ban stuff, or trying to rotate things. Like both, like there's like two parts of that I don't like. I don't like that it's like we're banning to make things fresh, when I think a way to make things fresh is just to have standard be shorter. And then we're also limiting when we can ban things. So if things suck, they're just gonna suck, and we can't, like, things, ideally things have to suck at this time of the year, right? For things to feel better for the players. I really don't like that. I don't know the fix. I mean, I guess emergency bans, but I mean, even calling them emergency bans, like emergency sort of suggests like we're going to break the rules to do this. And it feels like we're getting Corey Steelcutter emergency banned, right? Like they discussed that would have been a thing. And now we're getting VIVI off the back of an emergency ban. So like, are we just going to keep having emergency bans? And if we consistently have emergency bans, they're not emergency bans. So what are we going to call that? Because I think calling it an emergency ban is silly, but whatever. Our intention is to make changes to the format once a year around rotation, unless we have what constitutes an emergency called a Felidar Guardian situation. We do think we are likely at that point, but it's good to keep in mind that we consider an emergency situation to be an instance where we ban a card during a window other than the yearly rotation window, not the one where we would go off schedule. So yeah, sure. Fourth and finally, we acknowledge that high-level competitive standard is lopsided. The majority of standard play is not. Okay, so this is like this is like saying, oh, play arena, it's fine because people just don't want to play miserable shit, which is kind of true. That's something I oftentimes struggle with, where it's like, it's something I've noticed the more I play more arena, is like, it's just fake. It kind of feels better some of the time because it's just like people can't get cards, they don't want to spend money, or they're just like getting things from drafting and they're saving. And like, I don't know, people play more monocolor decks, they play more mono red. There's just a lot of stuff about it that I guess makes it feel better, but it's also like, that's not, I don't want to say it's not important, but it's like the problem is the things that the formats are capable of, right? Like people will do what the formats are capable of at the highest level in competitive context. So it's like they will do the most broken things the most often. And that definitely affects arena ladder, but I guess it is kind of nice that you can just kind of play Magic and, you know, put your headphones on and ignore all the complaining, and maybe it's not that bad. But I don't know how valuable that is to a player to hear, for example. Most players who play standard outside of the competitive sphere have different experience. Now, that being said, there's a balance to be struck between things are fine with most play and things are unstable with high. Okay, so kind of what I just talked about, that we haven't currently hit yet. But when we make ban decisions, we make them for the entire ecosystem. High-level play gets the headlines and clicks, but the everyday experience is also important. So I guess this is just like making a note of like bans suck for casual people. Because like I said, like there's a lot of people that are never going to read this article. They're never going to know when the scheduled bans happen. They're not going to care. They're going to ask for bans when it's outside of the ban window, or like when a set hadn't come out for whatever the ban window is. So yeah, it's difficult to balance that. But I do think Magic sort of has this very useful tool, which is Commander. I think there's legitimate concerns that like we have to make standard appealing to Commander players because it's such a large percentage of our audience. But at the same time, it is nice that there's this format that people that want to be casual can engage in. And I guess my point in that is saying, like, can standard be something that people engage with and disengage with? Where, like, if there's a ban, people opt out and then they come back in. And I guess the way that you do that is by making budget-friendly options. I think there's a lot of ways to accomplish that. One of the things I even discussed recently was if UB sets that were primarily standard legal cards could have like Modern Horizon-esque things within the set at a similar rarity. So like in the draft format, let's say that the Spider-Man set had like actual Yawgmoth, but it was a Spider-Man card, the Modern Horizons card. So that card is going to be really excited for Modern players and Commander players. It's going to be too good for Standard, right? Like VIVI probably falls under that category. But it's probably going to retain value, and you could still have it be come like the rarity clip of any mythic rare in the set, right? So it's going to be a part of Limited. It's going to be a part of Arena Limited. It's going to be available at the same rate that the mythics that maybe exist in Standard will be, but it could retain some of the value and make it so the packs still have value. The Modern players get new cards. The Commander players get exciting cards like VIVI. And then the Standard players don't need to acquire it, but it still increases the value of the packs they're getting to acquire Standard cards. And I don't know if that's a perfect solution, but that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say, like, are there ways to make things better to be a Standard player? And there's a lot of different things they could do. I don't know if they've really done any of those. It kind of just feels like they've forced things that are good for Commander and, I don't know, I guess Commander and Modern players into the realm of Standard. Things like VIVI, and then just like 3-year Standard, accelerating the power level, you get stronger cards. More of those cards will see play in Modern, but it also means that there'll be more broken things in Standard. I wonder if there's some way that they could sort of course correct and change things that would be appealing for all different audiences. But whatever. That was my tangent. Hopefully my points came across. I don't even know where I was. High-level play, that means the flip side of the current story could also be true. High-level play can appear balanced, but we may take action if everyday play isn't fun or engaging. That's not the current situation, but it's something we keep in mind. Keep in mind for larger conversations around the format. That's an interesting note, but yeah, I think if you think about games like League of Legends or whatever, Overwatch, there's probably characters and champions or whatever where they don't really matter at competitive levels, but they make like lower tier, lower skill level players have a lot less fun just for existing. So you'll see nerfs in things that are, you know, at high levels are really strong because people are super precise and efficient at using them. But at low levels, people are like, why would they nerf that? That character sucks, and vice versa. So interesting point. I think that's like a relevant design idea to keep in mind. So some people cite like the bans of like Hopeless Nightmare Up, the Beanstalk, all these sort of different things. I think that you could argue that those things sort of exist in the like lower space for Magic balancing. Before we go, I will note that we focus mostly on Standard here, but November 10th announcement will encapsulate all usual formats we talk about in updates. So that means you can get your Modern, Pioneer, whatever bands. I don't really know. I mean, I could talk about, I guess, Pioneer a bit, but I'm of the opinion that Pioneer is like, it's balanced in terms of metagame diversity, but it's like the ban list doesn't really make that much sense to me. I think that you could have a perspective of like, we should be unbanning cards because like the Mice archetype is just more powerful than a bunch of the things that we have on the ban list. Or you could try to lower the power of some of the top decks in the metagame to bring more things in line with it. But I think there's enough diversity that, you know, it probably would be more likely that they would unban stuff. I assume they're not going to do anything in Pioneer. I don't really know about Modern and the other formats. Standard is pretty obviously. I think it's going to be VV and nothing else if we do get those bans. But we'll get more information in the upcoming weeks, so we'll talk about that later. So next ban and restricted announcement will be on November 10th. We'll be watching closely to see how Standard develops, but we're prepared to take action given the current state of the format. Sorry. Okay. Until then, we're hoping everyone battling Standard Archdigital enjoys their time playing. Okay, so I don't know. What's my overall takeaway? What do I really feel here? It kind of seems like they're like, we like what we're doing. It seems like things have sucked and people have been complaining and they're like, well, we think it's right anyway. And we're going to modify things a little bit. We're going to turn the knob over. it seems like it was more just reinforcing, like, we're not going to have these bans because they're bad for people that have invested on the trips and for more casual players. And that's fine. I think it's, like, fair. Even though I don't like most of the things they've done, even though I think you can kind of track where these things have caused problems in a lot of capacities, I'm going to have a bias, obviously. But I can understand why, like, none of this is illogical. None of this doesn't make any sense to me. I definitely get it. I'm just concerned that maybe things will continue to get worse, and we'll just get to a point where we can't backtrack, we can't reverse things. It's possible we're already there. Like with Universes Beyond and 3-year standard, I don't even know if they have any interest in going back on those things ever for like the rest of Magic. But I'm not sure. It's all very complicated. It's a lot of different powers that be that have different things they're trying to accomplish and goals, and you have to keep in mind these people are trying to do what they're told and make the best game under the parameters that they're given. It's a very difficult job. I don't envy them. And I appreciate all the work all the designers do. They don't get much credit, but that's just, I think, the majority of game design. I hope the best for Magic. I hope the best for Standard. I hope people enjoy the new sets coming out. I'm still a bit pessimistic. I was hoping that going into this article and reading and watching it, I would walk away being amazed and so happy that they changed these things. But ultimately, it seems like, we're going to get like an extra window next year or something, and this ban gets moved up, and they're just hoping that after they ban VIVI, everything will work out. Which, it's possible that's the case. There are some cards, like Kaito Enduring Curiosity, are a bit scary to me. I'm not really worried about any of the mono red cards. I mean, Screaming Nemesis sucks. It's miserable, but I think it's probably fine. You have like nowhere to run decks existing in the format. Either way, thanks for watching me yap, and maybe this is a useful way to interpret these articles. Let me know if you want to see more stuff like this. But this is just like a first reaction. This is me reading it as it came out. And yeah, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Peace. Take care.